Can you imagine running your business like Patton? Maybe with a little bit softer glove than he had, but he knew what they were going up against. He knew they were going up against the Germans. He knew they were fierce, but he also instilled knowledge and confidence in his leaders. And it's the same thing, when you see a business owner that has a great leadership team that feels like they're autonomous in what they're overseeing and they're all pulling in the same direction, it's no accident that they're more successful than their peers that don't, all things being considered equal. And I've just never understood how, your family ought to be the same way, not as hardened as probably a business, because you've got so many mouths and families to feed. But if you think about it, you probably have more mouths and families to feed in your legacy that you're not communicating than you do in your business.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and I'm your host, John Gallagher. What if the legacy you leave behind isn't just about the business you build, but about the lives you touch and the future you secure? We often talk about that as uncommon leaders. Well, today's guest, a second-time guest, Jim Erben, and he spent over 3 decades guiding visionary leaders through one of the most overlooked challenges they'll ever face, designing a succession plan that protects their life's work, their family, and their legacy. His new book, Succession by Design, is packed with real-life stories, some cautionary and some inspiring, that reveal why fewer than 1 in 5 business owners have a written succession plan and what that means for everyone who depends on them. But here's the twist. This message isn't just for business owners. It's for anyone in a position of leadership who cares about what happens next, about the people, the values, and the impact that will endure long after they're gone. And he challenged us to ask, what's your magic number? What will it take for you to live out your life happily ever after? And how are you going to ensure your legacy is intentional, not just accidental? So whether you're running a company, leading a team, or simply thinking about the future, Jim's insights here are going to clarify your vision and align your personal and professional goals, and help you design a plan that lets you exit in style on your terms. So get ready for a conversation that's about more than business. It's about life, leadership, and the power of planning for what's next. Hey, Jim Erben, welcome back to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, John. I'm glad to be back. It's been a year.
It has been a year. I can't believe it. As we record this, folks, you understand it was 1 year ago today where we released episode 175 with Jim Erben. And I wanted to actually touch on that. We talked about the Silver Tsunami, which is in your new book, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But let me ask you, in a year, has it gotten any better or is it getting worse?
No, it hasn't gotten any better. The storm clouds are coming in the horizon. You can see it. So people are getting a little bit more anxious about it, I would say. But it hadn't really changed a whole lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Again, they're a year older. We talked about that in terms of how folks are seeing the generational gap in terms of their business and what they need to do with it as leaders and as business owners. But we're here to talk about that Succession by Design in terms of your book. So let's talk about topic. Let's jump right into it so folks know what's happening. What does it actually cost a business owner or a leader to continue to put off succession planning and not worry about it?
2 things. First of all, I want to take a step back. The reason why most people face their future, whether it's exiting their business, retiring from a big company, or whatever, the reason why most people face the future with apprehension instead of anticipation is because they really don't have it well designed. Whatever it is, whatever their retirement, whatever their exit is, it's not well designed. And the second thing that I think a prospective business owner that would listen to this, or an advisor that is dealing with their business owners, if I told you, John, if you had an identical twin, had an identical business, kids, family, objectives, everything were identical, your twin brother just kept doing what they're doing, sticking their head down and hoping for a great day sometime in the future, you came up with a well thought out plan of how you're going to someday leave your business so that you can exit with minimal risk of ever running out of money, minimal taxes, and you'll live happily ever after, with a robust continuity plan that will protect your family, your business, and your key employees in the event of a continuity event that's unforeseen. Who's more likely to accomplish their objectives with less stress? And that's the question I always ask. And if anybody says no, you need to walk away because they don't get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I love that analogy in terms of just comparing the two in the family. Like who's going to get their kind of best and intact and first. And while the answer seems so obvious, we wait so long. I mean, look, from the CEO who's listening or the leader who's listening right now says, I'm only 52 years old. I'm not planning to retire for another 15 years. What do I need to worry about that now for? What do I need to worry about that now for, Jim?
I'm not a sailor, but I'm going to use a sailing analogy. If you don't, there's a great quote in my book from a famous Roman philosopher named Seneca, and it says, if a person does not know what harbor they are making for, no wind is the right wind. And the analogy is, if you don't know where you're going, the boat can take you anywhere it wants to go. And if you're not looking up to make sure that you're going towards the island you want to go to or the destination you want to go to, the wind may blow you right, it may blow you left. How do you know if it's on track? That's probably my best response to it.
So what keeps them from doing it then? What do you see? I mean, look, you got 30 years. You wrote the book. We're going to talk about your book. You didn't just write the book in the last 6 months, although you may have written it. You've been writing it for 30 years. What do they not do it?
Fear, I guess, honestly. Fear of, kind of like a lot of people don't go to the doctor because they don't want to know. Probably anxiety in that they don't know what questions to ask. They don't really know how to formulate their objectives. And so they're just hoping, the old adage, you need to hire somebody. I'm being facetious, but you need to hire somebody to tell you do more revenue and more profitability, and you'll be more profitable. And inherently that's accurate, but there's a lot of other things that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
And we always try to prepare people for exiting their business either internally or to a third party, that if you were buying your business, what holes would you poke to push down the value? Is it, executive retention? Is it risk management? Is it whatever it is? What is it that if you were buying John Gallagher, you would poke holes in? They don't have this isn't quite where it needs to be, this isn't quite where it needs to be. And it's a self-reflection.
You think about it, first of all, I think fear is exactly right. Fear of that unknown. They don't want to go to the doctor. It's kind of the same thing. You don't want to talk to a financial advisor and talk about what's possible. Right. Yet if you don't do that, to your point, your boat analogy, you're going to get exactly where you end up. There's no intention with that, and your book Succession by Design is very intentional. Or they don't know what questions to ask, and does it seem weird that their pride gets in the way and they don't want to ask the questions? They don't want to tell somebody that they don't know, especially since they've owned a business and brought it up from bootstrapped it all the way up through. I can see how both of those things that would be a problem. So you've written the book. Tell me kind of who did you write it for? And why did you write it now? What's the timing have to do with writing it now?
Let's go repeat a comment that was at the beginning of our last a year ago, 365 days ago. There's a silver tsunami coming. I represent part of it. I'm in my early 60s. And the silver tsunami is, in the next 8 years, 10 million businesses are changing hands for somewhere in the neighborhood of over $13 trillion. That's probably greater than 40% of our GDP. So the question to ask yourself, if you're a business owner or if you're advising business owners, is, are you going to take the Forrest Gump and Lieutenant Dan approach and hope you weather the hurricane? It worked out well for them, but do you really want to take that risk? Or do you want to take the one that, favors, preparation, or prepares those prepared? Which is the better approach? And I have never seen proactive planning ever be detrimental to an outcome, ever, in 30 years. And I've seen a lot of failure to plan that has caused horrific results.
Jim, you talk about that in the conclusion of your book. And we're kind of all over. Your book is full of examples, which is really powerful in and of itself, of what good looks like with regards to planning and what bad looks like. And you talk about, tell them the story about and we're not going to share every story in the book because we want them to write the book and not everything about it. But that story struck me, where you had a spouse who came back and said, can you get the will out? And he didn't really do anything. Lost somebody early and didn't do it.
For sure. I got a call from a lady that I knew. I had spoken with them 8 years ago, she and her husband. I was out of town. My staff called me and said, there's a lady here named Jane who is pretty frantic and very upset, and she needs a copy of her will. I didn't have a really good feeling in my gut, and I just said, tell her to go home. I've got her number. I'll call her here shortly. And I told everybody, I said, go into our server and look up the last name and tell me what you have. We had nothing. Not the answer I wanted, but it was the answer I expected. We had contacted her husband 11 times via telephone, text, and email combined. And his last text response to me was, I don't have time to mess with this right now. So they never executed their will. There were 2 teenage kids in the house. Their husband was found dead on their ranch, and it was just a traumatic situation. So it helped me really start focusing heavy on legacy planning for our existing clients, because first of all, women outlive men by 5.8 years, and once the man passes away and the lady is left, she's the last barrier to the greatest transfer of wealth in our country's history. Are your kids prepared? Do they know what the expectations are of the wealth coming down to them? And the funny part of that story is most More than half of the people don't want to disclose to their kids that they're wealthy. They're driving a Range Rover, sometimes flying on a private jet for spring break. And they have a pretty good idea, kids aren't dumb, that they're not going to be, getting, food stamps for lunches or coupons for lunches at school. And I tell them this all the time. We don't want them to know how much we have. I'm like, that's your plan? That's not a plan. That's a failure to plan. They know. You don't have to submit their financial statement, but don't make them, they're not going to think you've had this business for 30, 40, 50 years, second generation, third generation. They understand that they're above the poverty level by 100-fold.
The last chapter, or next to the last chapter in your book, is titled, Ladies, May I Have Your Attention? In fact, I think it might even be the conclusion. And that's a little bit about what you're saying. How, let's just use the spouse. And again, you talk about this, it's not just about the ladies, although they outlive. Some ladies are business owners, some are leaders. It's not what this is about. But it's about, are we engaging our family in this planning process? Which is another one of those barriers, by the way, to your point. We're kind of afraid to tell them what's happening, what the situations are, or, they don't think that you're going to be poor, but the other side is you don't think that they are mature enough to handle what might be them as well. So why is it so important for the spouse to ultimately get active in this process, both talking to the leader here to make sure you include them, don't be egocentric and do that, but secondly, for the spouse to really work their way in?
You just hit on 2 points, either intentionally or by accident. I've had we've gotten new clients because the planner or the firm did not didn't even look the spouse in the eye, the wife in the eye. And whether it's, same-sex marriage, partners, whatever, you have to treat both spouses equal. It's common sense. We have great relationships with the non-working in the business spouse. That doesn't mean they're not working, but we have great relationships with the spouses. And it stuns me, and I beat my head against the wall with some of our clients who say, look, Laura knows she's going to call you. I'm like, that's not a plan either. We need to sit down and talk. Good night. What you don't want to have happen, and for those of you that are advisors or those of you that are running businesses, you don't want your spouse to pick up the phone after you got hit by a bus and have to deal with financial uncertainty and turmoil by not being included in the discussions that are going to outline the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. And there are many times they're tax inefficient. And, as you might, John, if you or your wife had, something happened to you, most people's wives, if they don't know, they're scared to death. So they have inaction. They don't want to act. They're afraid to make a mistake because it's costly. And I just don't understand that we are not focusing actually more on them than the primary business owner. I'm dead serious. Because
I think you're right. I think you're spot on, and I think involving both the spouse and to a certain extent the family in that process is so important. And it comes down to legacy as well. So it's not just the wealth itself, but it's the legacy in terms of the family. And you talk about, which I've highlighted, and I really wanted to hear from you about each one of these a little bit, 3 legacy tools that families can use. One is the family constitution. The second is the legacy retreat. And then the third is the ethical will. Those are 3 tools that you talk about inside the book. Tell me as much or as little about those as you want to, and how that helps a family and a leader in this journey.
Probably the best way, I'm just going to tell another story. I love it. Storytelling.
Love it.
We had a gentleman in Texas who passed away. We were never able to meet his adult kids. One was 25, the daughter was 29. She was married, the son wasn't. Their mother had passed away years before. We never got to know her. But for whatever reason, even when he was sick, you don't need to meet them. So he passes away. A week or 2 later, the brother's on. We know him. He's a client of ours. He's a trustee. And we're saying each of you have, several $1 million in a trust. And we suggest that you limit it was actually like 6. You limit your income withdrawal to 3%, and that way the principal will always be protected and it'll grow for you and account for inflation and everything else. So that's $180,000. So do either of you have any questions on that? The son raises his hand and goes, I just made barista at Starbucks. Does that mean I have to quit? John and my eyes were like, what? He just didn't have a clue. He said, do I have to quit my job? And I'm like, no, it's the opposite. You have a backstop, but you need to go on and be a productive member of society. And then on the flip side of that, the daughter wanted to bring her husband in because he's good with numbers. And I'm like, this is the fruits, the $180,000 a year that can come out, you guys can enjoy together. But your dad and mom meant this just for you. Well, she didn't understand it, yet they were divorced, a year later. And had they commingled it, it would have been community property in Texas. And back to your original question, because that's really what the story is really what's at risk. Mm-hmm. There's no expectation laid out to the kids of what is our expectations are of you in future generations, what the money's meant to do, what it's not meant to do, and how we want you to be stewards of it. And I go back to the Olympics. When the torch relay happens, which is what you're doing when passing wealth from generation to generation. Now the torch gets bigger, but if you just say it's the same thing, so you pass the torch, I'm running, and here comes John Gallagher, and I hand it to John. John takes off. John doesn't drop the torch. He doesn't go, lay it on the sidewalk, go in and have a sandwich. He's running to the next destination and meeting the next one.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I believe in doing business with people you like and trust and not just a company name. That's why a strong personal brand is essential, whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader within a company. Brand Builders Group, the folks who have been helping me refine my own personal brand, are offering a free consultation call with one of their expert brand strategists. They'll help you identify your uniqueness, craft a compelling story, and develop a step-by-step plan to elevate your impact. So head on over to CoachJohnGallagher.com/BBG, as in Brand Builders Group, to schedule your free call and take the first step toward building a personal brand that gets you noticed for all the right reasons. That's CoachJohnGallagher.com/BBG. Now, let's get back to the episode.
What would happen if we didn't have that plan? The torch would get lost, it'd be dropped, the flame would go out. All of these metaphors and analogies are related to the transfer of wealth from the multiple generations. The Vanderbilt family, which I talk about in our book, everybody knows it. Cornelius Vanderbilt passed away in 1877. They had, $200 million, and I believe that's the accurate number, in their estate. That was more than the Treasury had. The federal government had. 1973, 96 later, they had a reunion, and there was zero millionaires in that family. And then on the flip side of that, you can look at the Rockefeller family, and legacy is more than just that. Legacy is teaching values and the things you want to instill in your family. I'm working with some great friends of mine that have done extremely well, and we're talking to their kids, and, this is a responsibility for you, is what they tell them. This, I'm sorry that you're burdened with this. If you don't want to be, we'll give it all to charity. But if you want it, it comes with, we don't want great grandkids, sticking drugs up their nose or laying on the beach in Malibu eating bonbons. We want everybody to be productive citizens of society. And your kids don't know that if you don't explain that to them. And they'll give you feedback back. I mean, I've had kids say, hey, put somebody else in charge of it. We'll do what you're saying, but that's a big responsibility, and I want to raise my kids. That's fair. But get dialogue going. It's very important.
Yeah, I love that, how you described, and folks, again, getting the book and kind of reading your way through that family constitution, the vision and values for your family are just as important. You mentioned the Vanderbilt family and the failure. That's only 5 generations-ish, 100 years.
Right.
In terms of that change, and none of them are millionaires from that number that started. That's not having a vision for how you want to treat that as a family. It's not having values for how you set. And that legacy retreat really is about communicating and developing those values. Look, we spent all that time doing it as a business in terms of vision and values. Why wouldn't we do that as a family as well? I think it's just really powerful and something that folks need to read about. Coming back a little bit to that business side, which makes sense with this, because then that's a, if you will, succession gap in the family side. You really are writing this, and your clients, though, are on the business side. That succession gap, you refer to it fundamentally as a leadership gap on the business when that doesn't continue on, this tsunami that's coming, and we don't know what we're going to do with the business. And so tell me about that. How is this succession gap or lack of succession planning really a leadership gap? And what are the blind spots that the leaders see?
Probably the best way, I'm a George Patton disciple. I love the movie. I love reading his books. I love most of how he managed. Can you imagine running your business like Patton? Maybe with a little bit softer glove than he had? But he knew what they were going up against. He knew they were going up against the Germans. He knew they were fierce, but he also instilled knowledge and confidence in his leaders. And it's the same thing, when you see a business owner that has a great leadership team that feels like they're autonomous in what they're overseeing and they're all pulling in the same direction, it's no accident that they're more successful than their peers that don't. All things being considered equal. And I've just never understood how, and you said it a minute ago, your family ought to be the same way, not as hardened as probably a business, because you've got so many mouths and families to feed. But if you think about it, you probably have more mouths and families to feed in your legacy that you're not communicating than you do in your business, unless you have many thousands of people. And pretty soon your legacy is going to catch up to them.
Absolutely. Jim, you touched on a story before we hit the record button too about the power of closing that succession gap in the business for the owner, and that they don't have to be as involved in everyday business, and that the systems they put in place and the development of their people can provide them some freedom that they're not ready for. I'd love to if you share that Memorial Day to Labor Day story that just is really powerful with regards to the impact of developing your people and having systems in place.
There's no one that wants to buy your business and feel like they have to be married to you, John.
Great point.
They have one marriage and they don't need another one. And I'm not going to pay you fair market value for your business if every key relationship and you are the linchpin to the business and your underlings, which is what they are at that point, they're not leaders, aren't capable of running it if something happens to you. Because if I invest in your company, I'm not going to give you the upfront cash you're talking about. We're going to have a long earnout. Because I've got to make sure that the owner's skills and relationships transfer over. And you do that from a consulting basis. I mean, you're fantastic at that. If you don't have that, then you've got your key people that are just walking around blind. They don't know who's in charge. That's one thing, absent a robust continuity plan. Most business owners have owed 2 or 3 people over time playing golf, hunting, fishing, whatever. If anything happens to me, Jane, you're supposed to take over the business. A year later, if anything happens to me, John, you're supposed to take over the business. I get hit by a bus, they both meet at the water cooler and go, I'm in charge. No, he said I'm in charge, and chaos ensues. I've seen it happen, real time.
You talk about that, Jim. What I hear you saying too is that, and again, more stories in the book and things like that, but the value of your business, if you are looking to sell it, is and the increase in value in business is more closely related to the leaders that you're developing below you and the systems that you put in place than it is your revenue. While the revenue is very important in having that, the folks who are coming in, they don't really, I say they don't care. They care about that, but they want to know that it's going to go on without you, right? I mean, what type of impact can it have on the value if you're the owner-centric, if you're the only one that they can rely on?
Twofold answer. First is, if you're listening to this, flip your business around. And if the business was worth $30 million, $20 million, I don't care, pick the figure that you think your business is worth. Would you pay fair market value for it if they had someone like you running the business the way you're running it, i.e. it's owner-centric? Think of I would estimate I would pay 15 to 20% less and or stretch it out. I would stretch out the payment because there's risk on me. I go write you a check and all the relationships are tied to you and they're out. Or the skills. I don't know what I need to know to make this business successful.
It's what I preach all the time. Developing yourself, developing the leaders around you, putting systems and processes in place ultimately leads to sustainable success and or increased value inside the organization. And they sometimes the blind spot is when they hear that number for the first time. You're like, what do you mean it's only worth that? Because they've been so involved in the business that they haven't had a chance to see that. It's so important. And folks, you just got to listen to that. Even as a leader, if you're not a business owner, and what you're leaving for the next leader in terms of getting them ready and how long that success is sustainable. I want to talk about one more concept in your book, because, again, we can't talk about all of them, but you touched on the words already, and I want you to tell the listeners what it really means. The happily ever after number. What is that, and why should leaders really care about it?
Because it is probably the most important number that involves your exit. And I'm going to go back to the silver tsunami. If you're going to do the Forrest Gump and Lieutenant Dan approach, God bless you. The number is, what number do you need or want for you and your spouse to live happily ever after with minimal to no risk of ever running out of? Might be your current compensation. I don't know. But what we do is we figure it out, and I'll just use an easy number of $400,000 a year. If that's what you make right now, you would need more than $10 million, net, taxes that you paid for selling, net, everything, close your cost, all that stuff, because that's 4% of $10 million. And that's the most. I really like to see 3.5 or less. So I would rather, I've had people that have exited in a $10 million business, and they call me. They weren't our client. They became our client, but we had to postpone it. They were needing $550,000 a year on a $10 million business. And I said, you have 3 choices here. 1, reduce the amount of money you need, which I never like to suggest that, but bring yourself under $400,000. And that's never a pleasant conversation. It takes people off. Secondly, why don't you keep putting money away on the side and grow your business another 3 or 4 years so that we can get that number under 4% of the withdrawal rate. Maybe whatever that'd be, 14 million, whatever that number is. Or the third option is start smoking Camel no filters and shorten your life expectancy, because that's the only thing.
Reduce your expectancy in life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but that number is critical. It's critical.
Probably not important. Yeah, you mentioned the Monte Carlo simulation. So you're talking about those percentages. Is the Monte Carlo simulation is what is that percentage going to be, and what's the likelihood that you're going to be able to do that based on where you are today?
Correct. And it tells you based on 1,000 market iterations. It takes into account just about every single thing. And we won't sign off on a plan that doesn't have a greater than 85% Monte Carlo success rate.
Love that. And that's 85% likely that you're going to have the money that you think you're going to have and
age
be able
100.
to live. I really like that. Another concept inside the book that you explain really well for folks to understand. So the book test, they're going to read your book. They're going to set it up on the shelf behind me, just like the shelf behind me, and they're going to say, man, I read that book again now. You clearly want them to take some action. You talk about in the book, you talk about a roster of folks they need to have. Just like your medical advisor, you need a team to take care of your wealth. The financial planner or wealth planner, the exit planning strategist, the CPA, a business attorney, estate planning, and an M&A advisor, a team to help you get that done. You provide many of those roles, but even as a leader, you need to have at least that wealth manager, CPA.
But you have to have somebody that can articulate a plan for you. Because this plan is fluid. It's not like, your blueprint of the house you're living in. You're one and done. You built the house, you made the changes, and you're done. This plan changes. And if you wonder why does it change, think about you, the business owner. What has changed in your life in the last 3 to 5 years? You may have different key executives. You may have opened a new business, an ancillary. There's just a lot of things that happen. And they impact the direction of your ship sailing towards whatever your destination is. I can't express enough. The people you need and the people that aren't doing a very good job of doing this plan. When I have somebody tell me, my lawyer did our exit plan, really, what did your lawyer tell you that your receptionist needs to say if you get hit by a bus and your largest client calls tomorrow morning? What was the exact script that they're supposed to say? And they look at me with a blank stare. And you need somebody that is in the planning business. That's why builders aren't architects and architects aren't builders.
Mm-hmm.
We're an architect. We help design plans. There are a few firms out in the country that do this, but find somebody that's going to start with a blank piece of paper and find out what your goals are, and then get a value of the business, because that's going to drive the whole process. Know your number, align your personal wealth with your business succession plan, and then, with a continuity plan and all the things that are in the book, you will exit in style. That's succession by design, or do you want succession by default? That's the other half. I guess I should have written the other half of the book.
Say that one again. Do you want succession by design or succession by default?
Our program that we do is succession by design, not default. The book is titled Succession by Design. The by default is a no-brainer. That's not doing planning. And it's over all of the stories that we've just talked about.
Yeah, good intentions. You can have all kind of good intentions. That's by default. But being intentional with your decisions. And I think I heard you say the first thing they ought to really do is figure out what their number is, what that big number,
follow the book
after number, so they can work the plan. Develop the plan and work the plan.
The reason I wrote the book is we can't get to the 10 million people that are out there. I wrote it to start getting people to think. I wrote it to get advisors to think on behalf of their clients. Because I don't want to see what sometimes I hear stories about like the person that didn't have the will or that didn't have the exit plan, and it's never a good story.
Yeah, it's an awful story. Jim, we're going to get this up. They're going to get this episode out before your book comes out, actually on July 28th. Where do you want folks to go to get the book? And if they get there before July 28th, what are some things they get as a, if you will, a free gift?
Depending on how many you buy, you can go on our website. It's successionbydesignbook.com. I'll repeat that, successionbydesignbook.com. It's got where you can order it. If you want bulk orders, there's incentives in there. There's all kind of things in there. It could be a fishing trip or a college football game in Austin, Texas, or what have you, depending on how many. But I'm really trying to go out and spread the word, even to my colleagues. I don't really call them competitors, but to our colleagues, to really go out and help these business owners because they're asking for it. This is one of the most requested topics in the country today because people are getting scared.
So they can also go. You'll speak about it as well. You can bring. You're speaking to organizations to speak about this topic. And you're right. I think it is a topic that doesn't get talked about enough, folks. I do encourage you to go out there and get a book, get a copy, at least a copy of the book for you if you're a business owner or a leader and you want to plan your future. As Jim said, you want to have succession by design, and you don't want to do it by default anymore. Get out there and get a copy of this book. Jim, you mentioned Texas baseball as one of the potential gifts, if you will. Or you didn't say baseball, you said a football game, I think, versus Ole Miss is on the website. Just as we record this, we're getting ready for the College World Series to get started up, and both our teams, UT and West Virginia University, are two of the 8 teams in the College World Series. So you guys have been there before. We've never been there. You could let us have this one anyway.
Okay.
See how it goes.
I'll let them know.
We'll check in on that. I don't even have, because my Monte Carlo is only like 83%. I don't want to bet on the Mountaineers, but they're playing pretty well and be singing Country Roads in front of you. That's my walk-up song. Hey, I want to ask you just some fun. If you had a walk-up song in baseball, you're getting ready to go out to bat, and they're playing the song for Jim Erben, what's the song going to be that they're going to play while you're walking up to bat?
I can't believe I'm going to say this. It just comes. We are the champions.
All right, okay. Gosh,
I just want to do it just to piss off the team.
Not that you're a rebel or anything like that.
No.
So good. All right.
I did have a comment I want to share, John, real quick.
Sure, absolutely.
One of the things that occasionally, as an advisor or a business owner, you're going to need, when you have a gap, whether it is an organizational gap or you have a growth gap, where you need to be implementing strategies outside the 9 dots. You all should look up, and I'm saying this, he has no idea I'm getting ready to say this, but you need to look up John Gallagher because he is instrumental in anybody I find that has a gap in organizational or growth. He would be the first person I would call, and I really do mean that. I've known you for a couple of years, and there's nobody that impresses me out there from a consulting basis.
Well, Jim, I appreciate that. You're right. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to blush or anything like that on the call, nor ask for, but I do appreciate it. I appreciate those kind words, and I love getting to have conversations with you, and I hope there's more in the future, especially as you take this book, get it out there and get it in the hands of folks who really need to be helped. So, Jim, it's been great chatting with you. I wish you the best with it, and thanks again for adding value to the listeners of the Uncommon Leader podcast.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate being on here again.
Yes, sir. Such an important topic. I love having conversations with Jim Erben. I mean, the points that he makes with regards to the leadership gap that exists in succession planning and the simplicity of the title of the book, Succession by Design. I just love that. Whether you're a leader or a business owner, there's something there for you, and don't wait. No doubt about it. We do not want to do this by default. You need to get a plan to get your legacy to be continued, both from a wealth standpoint inside of your business and your financial future, but also with your family, with those core values and vision as well. Just both of those are so important. So I can't recommend this book enough. And I hope you heard something in this podcast that you know somebody else needs to hear. Please share it with them. That'd be great. And again, drop us a 5-star review on Spotify or podcast or Google, wherever it is, Amazon, where you're listening. I love to hear reviews and I see reviews, and I appreciate those words. Hey, go and lead by design and grow champions. Until next time, go and grow champions.